Hi folks, Joe asked if I'd make a YouTube video about my Chinese lathe, so here we go. Just to put things in perspective, I used to have a Colchester master lathe that was absolutely worn out. I had it for 15 years, it was old when I got it, it was made in 1957 and it was had it. So I bought this as a replacement. I actually purchased it from the Chinese manufacturer and arranged importation into New Zealand myself. As you can see, it's a 1440 lathe, which means 14-inch diameter swing maximum, that's with the gap piece in, and 40-inch between centres. I think that's at a stretch, quite seriously. Right, gear levers. You've got high and low speed, A, B, or red, blue, depends on what you like. If you're colourblind, A, B is better. And then you've got gear selections within that. Lower speed 84 up to 1850. I must admit, running at 1850 is scary speeds. My old Colchester would only run at about, I think, 500 odd RPM maximum. The rest of the stuff's all pretty straightforward. That's forward reverse for your carriage direction. Those are self-explanatory. I have no idea why anyone would want this jog button. It sort of makes the thing spin just a tiny wee bit. And these are your part of your gear selections for your thread cutting. You've got all of your calculations there for which gears you need inside there, as well as set down there to do your threads. That there is an extra that I put on as a stop for the carriage so that it didn't run into the chuck or anything like that. Haven't managed to do that yet. Good 3-jaw chuck, much more accurate than my old Colchester, but that's no surprise. Carriage, I asked to have the handle here on the right hand side. That was an option that the manufacturer gave me. Cross slide, all of the cross slides, all of the gauges are marked in both metric and imperial. Not exactly easy to read, but it actually doesn't matter because I bought the DRO with it and I seldom use either of the indicators on here. Top slide, yeah, good as gold. I think it's got about 75 or 80 mils travel. Bought a quick change tool post. This is the European style, which is very different to the American wedge style, as you can see. In hindsight, this was more expensive than the American style and probably not much better. The tool holders, that you take out for the Euro styles are more expensive, so that's something that did kind of put me off in hindsight. You can see the bed width, it's just under 200 mils. Pretty solid castings down here. If I look down in there, you can see they've gone to some extra effort with castings to strengthen them. And it's certainly rigid enough for what I want to do. Tailstock, I'll come back to that later. You can see it's sitting on a chip tray. I didn't go for the slide out chip tray, cost a bit more money and I figured I didn't need it. That's personal preference. And it's on 2 cabinets with a skirt in between. You get a bit of storage space in the cabinets. And my old Colchester never had this. It's like an emergency stop foot brake thing. I've only ever used it once when something came loose in the chuck. It also came with all of this stuff here except for the purple bit over there. A toolbox full of different gears and a few tools. Live centre, dead centre. And this thing is to go into the spindle, I gather, to put a centre in it. I've never used one of those. These are the jaws for the outside jaws for the 3-jaw chuck. Haven't used those yet. That's the face plate. By the way, I've got the D1-5 cam lock. Absolutely love the cam lock. It's fantastic for changing chucks. So much better than the old setup. 4-jaw chuck. That's another 200 diameter mill. That's 8-inch diameter chuck. Yeah, it works great. Came with that key. This here is a key I had to make myself for the cam lock. Interestingly, the supplier didn't give us a key for the cam lock. When I asked them, they said just use the chuck key, but they're actually a different size. That was no big deal. Travelling steady that goes onto the carriage here. That's what those bolts are for. Fixed steady. First time I went to do any machining, I found it was way too small, and so hence I've got this here. It's a homemade fixed steady. I've made another video about that, and that's obviously rather large. It's certainly does the job. Right, just generally about using the lathe. I think it's great. Digital readout is a must-have these days, I reckon. You're crazy if you don't buy one. It was an extra $300 US to have that supplied and fitted with the machine. And as I said earlier, I seldom look at the dials on here and on here, because you've got the X is that one, and Y, this one, linear scales with the digital readout. And the digital readout is more accurate than trying to read the dials on here. I'll give you just a shot down the back of the lathe. In there, where I'm pointing, is the linear scale for the x-axis. So that's the carriage movement. DRO was pretty well fitted, but now I'm going to move on to a few niggling little issues that I have with the thing when I got it. None of these are showstoppers, but I just wanted to tell you what the sort of thing you might run into when you're dealing with Chinese made equipment. I'm sure even with stuff that's made in Spain or some European countries, you'll have issues as well. First silly little thing, this aluminium plate on here with all the numbers and labels on it, when it came, the corners on here, just where I'm pointing, were absolutely razor sharp. There and there. I think that corner is still razor sharp because I can't get a file in there. It was just a matter of filing it off, but I actually ran my hand across it and cut my hand, just a tiny little cut. That was bad. What else? This, don't know what you call this, the thing for setting the angle of the top slide. You can see that it's got the graduations marked on there, and I had to put this little aluminium piece here because the marker on the top bit for lining it up, the marker was almost invisible. Next thing, probably the most significant thing, was the lead screw for the cross slide. It actually seems to have been machined inaccurately. In other words, the thread pitch changed very slightly as it moved, and it was mostly at when it was right back at this end here. It was out, you would take it a certain distance on the dial here, and the actual cross slide was moving a very slightly different amount, and I'm talking about maybe 0.1 of a millimetre was the worst I saw, which is about 3 thou. Obviously that's a big issue if you're trying to machine accurately using this gauge. The manufacturer actually ended up sending me a replacement lead screw to fix that problem. So wasn't good in the first place, but all credit to them. They sent me the replacement at their cost, both for the product and the shipping. So that was pretty good. More issues, minor issues. You can, I don't know if you can even see it, but on this shaft on the tailstock here, there's graduations, markings for the distance that it's moving in or out. They're almost impossible to read. They're far too light and far too vague to be of much use. Saving grace is it's got this on here, so it does 3mm per turn, and it's accurate down to 0.02 of a millimetre, which is about 1/1000. My Colchester didn't even have this gauge on it, so that's pretty good. One other annoying little issue with this, and I'm going to wind the cross slide right over quickly. Okay, so what you got here is this here is the linear scale for the digital readout. Okay, this thing here, which I'm going to lift out if I can, is a little gadget I had to make, and it's got a hex key welded onto a bit of steel that goes into this hex headed bolt in the carriage. That there is the carriage lock, right? And so I had to make this because when the carriage is wound back here, of course you can't get at the carriage lock, and most of your machining is done with your carriage somewhere around about here. I think they never thought about building this lathe with a digital readout on it when they designed it. It would have been really easy to have the lock somewhere over here. Anyway, that's what it is, and it's not a problem. Once I made this, it's quite easy to operate it. No big deal. A few other things about it. It's got a 50mm spindle. I actually think it's 52. Something like that, which is great. It covers most of the most of the stuff I want to machine anyway. If it's bigger than that, obviously I have to do stuff between centers or not at all. Yep, comes with the coolant setup and the lamp. It's a halogen lamp, which I was surprised at. I thought it would be LED these days. The halogen lamp gets very, very hot over time. Nice bright lamp, but it's so hot you can't touch this part of it after you've been using it for a while. I'll just move around the back of the machine. That down there is the coolant pump arrangement, which as you can see is not even connected up because I try and avoid using it. I used coolant on my old lathe, and what I found was the water for the water soluble coolant used to get in all the gaps in around here, and if you left the lathe sitting unused for a while, sometimes it would cause corrosion. So a little bit of rust on all those places wasn't a good thing. If I need to lubricate or cool it, I tend to just use a hand squirt bottle of something that's not corrosive. I don't think there's much else I can say. This lever here is for your auto feed for your carriage and your cross slide. That one there is to engage your thread cutting screw, lead screw thingy. Along with that, I've actually not used that feature on it yet. Even on my old lathe that in the 15 years I've had it, I think I only cut threads 3 or 4 times. Yeah, so in terms of machining and accuracy, I'm no expert in machining, but I think this thing's rigid enough for my purposes. I don't push it really hard like a commercial machinist might. One job that I did a while ago, I had to make a shaft up that was, I started out 350mm, that's about 14 inches long, and I wanted to get it machined to within 1/1000 or 0.03mm of accuracy. And I achieved that quite easily with this lathe. I was very pleased with the result. You can see there's a few machining marks on this shaft. It's now cut down to a length of about 300 mils. The machining marks were the result of a blunt carbide tip on here. I didn't realise at the time that it was blunt, and when I went to do the final finishing cut, it didn't quite have a good enough edge to get it right. Having said that, it was still accurate end to end by that 1/1000. So that's pretty good. Well, good enough for me. I'm happy with it. If you look down here, here's the extra tray that I made out of some scrap sheet metal that I had lying around, obviously to store some of the tooling. It's been absolutely wonderful having that there. Highly recommend doing something like that. Your cabinets here, if you have a look, you've got a little hole that slides. It's tight at the moment, but that slides open. There's a hole in there, and go to this one, there's a hole in there and equivalent holes at the back. I think the idea is you can slide a shaft right through that, appropriate chains and spreader bars, etc. You can lift the whole thing with it. Not something that I've had to do. Nice little feature here, my old lathe never had. This is simply just a little metal post that screws into the bed. What it does is it stops the tailstock from being accidentally pushed off the end of the lathe and falling on the floor. It's a good idea. I've nearly done it once on my old lathe. Yeah, so this here is some sort of safety cover that's meant to sit down on that. I have never set that up properly. I'm probably a naughty boy because I tend not to use that safety cover. I don't know what the heck it's going to protect you from anyway, because most stuff will come flying out this way. Bit more comment about this quick change tool post, Euro style. Yeah, easy to use, a bit hard to do one-handed, but you can lift out the tool holder. Right, you can actually rotate it round to different angles very readily, and saves a huge amount of time. You had to use some odd angles when I've been machining stuff between centres and getting right close into this end. And with this tool post you adjust the height of your cutter tip here by loosening that lock screw and moving this thumb screw up or down whilst it's unlocked, and then you lock it in position and check it. And by the way, here's a little gadget I made to check that you've got your tool height set correctly. It's down here, made out of a simple piece of scrap box section steel, threaded rod, some nuts and what we call a penny washer. And the idea is, I don't know if you can see that, you sit it on the flat surface of your carriage, and if you can see that, the tool cutter tip just fits underneath the washer. Right, if it just fits under, you've got it at the right height, like just touching. Obviously you can then just adjust it up and down. I'll get an angle this way. You can just see that just fits. Okay, and I've proved that that's the correct height. Quick and easy way to adjust your tool height. Okay, this here's your start, stop, forward, reverse lever. Much better idea than the old lathe. Just pull it out and down, and pull it out and go up. Simple as that. I don't think there's much else to tell you about this lathe. I'm very pleased with it. I would, if I had to buy another lathe, I would do it the same way. I bought it from a Chinese manufacturing company and arranged importing it myself. It takes a lot of time and patience to do that. You have to do a lot of research and ask a lot of questions, but at the end of the day I was happy with the result. The landed cost of this lathe in my shed here was approximately half of what it would have cost me to buy from a New Zealand supplier for a Chinese made lathe. Probably would have come from a similar factory to this, and the New Zealand supplier was only going to import it when I placed an order with them and paid a significant deposit, like 50% of the cost of the product. So it was worth the effort. The thing you have to remember, if you're importing yourself from a overseas supplier, whether China or anywhere else, if things go wrong you have little opportunity for legal recourse. If you're buying from a local company in your country, there's obviously a little bit more legal protection. Having said that, I bought this through the Alibaba trading site. Alibaba checks out the suppliers and they offer some trade assurance. I've never had to use it to see how well that works, but I do recommend operating through someone who offers you some assurance like that. Alibaba's a multi-billion-dollar company, and I think they would want to protect their reputation. Okay, hope this was all some use to you. Yeah, enjoy. Thanks very much.